What is going on, YouTube? We are back in this thing going live right now. I know that I started live a little bit early. It's supposed to start at 8 o'clock, but I got some other things to get to later on tonight. So, hoping to just go ahead and knock this out.
You see me on live?
I'm excited to be here with y'all, man, and I hope this show is valuable for y'all. I don't plan on being on too long, but I want to talk about how we can use generative AI to create high quality content online. I think there's a couple interesting things that came out this week, or I mean, I guess it's only Monday, but in the last week, there's been some interesting news in the AI space, and I recently did a talk on October 13th. So today is like November 6th. So not too long ago, I did a talk at Black Tech Weekend here in Detroit, Michigan, and it was basically on this topic. So I want to actually go over the presentation that I gave at that talk, and even some things have changed since that I did that talk a few weeks ago. And actually, one of the first headlines I want to get into with y'all is related to that. So there was recently an announcement from the Biden administration about some new sort of legislative I don't want to say restrictions, but guidelines basically on AI companies, AI software, and specifically in the generative AI space. And it's going to affect a lot of content creators, a lot of social media platforms, a lot of AI startup companies. And so in this stream, I just wanted to talk about that, talk about a couple other things that I found interesting this week, and then just kind of get into the recap of the presentation. So as y'all come in, go ahead and hit the like button, the subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 2,000 subscribers. A really big goal of mine. I'm trying to be more consistent with my streaming for that very reason. But yeah, let's go ahead and just go ahead and jump right into the first headline that we have here, y'all. So let me see. Let's go ahead and share this. So, President Biden issues an executive order on safe, secure, and trustworthy artificial intelligence. And we're not going to go through this entire thing, but I felt like, it was really important to know that you'll see when I go through my slides from my talk. This is something that I had actually brought up in the talk, was that as of October 13th, there wasn't any real governmental legislation around AI generated content. And that was one of the things I tried to hit on in my talk, was that if you're going to use AI generated content, don't use it as your own. Don't just go generate something, whether it's an image, whether it's a video, it's music, it's written text, whatever it is. Don't just go, to some AI software. I don't care how powerful it is or how good your prompt was initially. Don't ever just take the output directly from the AI and then try to pass it off as original content. So that was actually a point I had hit on in the talk. And then my point around that was that I knew that, there was already an AI Bill of Rights in the works, which we'll talk about when we get into the slides. But I think this is all kind of a part of that. This announcement came out. You can see this is directly from the whitehouse.gov website. You can see this was dated October 30th. So shortly after my talk, they do come out with their own sort of legislative guidelines that now have to be followed by a lot of these big tech companies and specifically AI companies. And so, the point was that not using AI generated content as your own was going to be helpful, because eventually there was going to be a day that there's going to be expectations around what AI generated content can even be created or shared or flagged by, certain search engines and social media companies. And all this is kind of the first step in this executive order. So, just breezing through, we see that there's new standards for AI safety and security. So there's been a lot of like fraud use cases with AI, or a lot of really mishandled information in some of the prompts or responses that are generated from AI prompts. And so there's a crackdown on that in this legislation. As we keep going, we see protecting Americans' privacy. So there's more initiatives around that, advancing equity and civil rights. So some DEI initiatives, supporting workers, promoting innovation and competition. So again, there's a really interesting point here that I want to touch on that kind of goes into what we were just talking about, ensuring responsible and effective government use for AI. So it looks like I might have passed it. Where is it at? Where is it at? Um, uh, 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 Here we go. So this one right here, this is the point that I really wanted to touch on. So protect Americans from AI enabled fraud and deception by establishing standards and best practices for detecting AI generated content and authenticating official content. That is the really big piece right there, in my opinion, of this legislation, at least for us as content creators, which we're obviously talking about in this stream, or for anybody who creates content, whether it's copy for your website, it could be product descriptions. If you sell things, you have a e-store or e-commerce store. There's so many different implications. When we say content creation is such a huge, broad topic, right? So it doesn't just mean you're blogging. It doesn't just mean you're doing podcasting. It could be any sort of content that you post and publish online and stamp with your name on it. These new guidelines, I feel like, are going to make it a lot more, I guess, challenging, if you will, to incorporate AI generated content into your content creation process and still have this authentic piece of content at the end of the day. So we'll talk about that more when I get to the slides, but I just wanted to kind of point this out that this is now going to be a legislative thing for companies to now flag AI generated content. So even if we are incorporating AI into our content creation process, I think it's going to be more important now than ever to make sure that everything you post or publish has that unique perspective and feel and take on the content itself. And you're really going to have to rework the output that you get from AI to really make it a unique piece of content. So we'll get into that, like I said, in just a second. But I just thought that this was really, really big because, like I said, I just did this talk on October 13th. And since then, there's already been huge updates, in terms of headlines regarding like AI legislation and things like that, regulation. So wanted to share that article. Thought that was really interesting. So let me see. Before we get into anything else, which we got a couple other things, I can save those to the end of the stream. So right now, I'm just gonna go ahead and get into this AI talk. So these were the slides that I did on October 13th at Black Tech Weekend. I won't go through everything in the same amount of detail, but I just want to, like I said, recap what the talk was about with you all and give you something to kind of just think about. So started out talking about what is generative AI. So for anybody who's like new to the stream, um, this is a quote from Cornell University, but basically it's just saying that generative AI is a subset of AI that creates new content from existing data, basically, as opposed to something like predictive AI that understands like when we're talking to Siri or like our YouTube recommendations or product recommendations on Amazon or like fraud alerts from our bank. Generative AI specifically creates new original pieces of content from data that already exists. So jump into some examples of this. So these are actually GIFs, but they're not planned because I'm on the stream right now. So these are actually typically moving videos or GIFs, but this is the company that I work for. So we do generative AI for real estate developers and architects. And so basically helping people to define or figure out what they can build on a given piece of land and all the different variations using AI. So they can pick different presets of building types and we can quickly pretty much take the space they give us and fill in different designs with parking stalls and ponds and units as needed for apartments or townhouses, things like that. So all this helps make architects and developers jobs a lot easier when they're trying to figure out, what sort of deals can they undertake or what kind of development do they want to build on a piece of land and things like that, which generally takes a really long time. But with generative AI, that can become a really powerful thing. And that's what the startup that I currently work for does. This is just one use case of that. And I tried to kind of give a bunch of different examples in the talk of use cases for generative AI because you never know who's in the room, right? So here's some more examples. A lot of people probably heard of Midjourney, which there's other types of AI that generate artwork, but essentially that's what Midjourney does. You've got DALL-E, Stable Diffusion. There's actually some other ones that I want to get into later on, probably after we finish this part of the stream. I want to show you some other alternatives to like ChatGPT in the middle. Super common, multi-purpose, generative AI, good for a lot of different things, right? But there's other alternatives to that. So like AI is just popping up everywhere, and there's so many things. It's easy to get caught up in the big known tools and headlines, but as this becomes more common in like every single area of business, startups, content creation, like AI is going to impact every single sector of business and creativity, like it already has begun to do. So these are just examples I wanted to give as I was kind of getting into the meat of the talk. So you got on the right here this one called Synthesia, and it does text to video generative AI, which is really cool. Can help save a lot of cost if you're trying to create some sort of training videos or something like that for like a company or whatever. If you don't want to outsource high quality production for a video, and it's like instructional or something very simple, I think there's a good use case for something like Synthesia there. So moving on, there was some more examples. So this one on the left is called V.io, and it does a bunch of different things, kind of like Synthesia, but this one specifically is generating music. And like I said, these are actually GIFs, so they're typically moving, but because I'm on the stream, you don't actually see it moving. But basically, you can decide on a type of like genre of music, a type of sound, and you can give it some text input and say like you can kind of describe the type of music that you want, and you can have something like V.io create original music for a piece of content that you're creating. And I know that if any of y'all create like videos or YouTube, you have podcasts, like if you're not a music creator like myself, this could be really helpful in the future of having royalty free music for your content where you don't have to worry about trying to go out and pay all these different, you know, companies that literally just have a bunch of stock music or um is slipping my mind right now. Epidemic Sound is one of them. There's a bunch of these providers that cost like 40, $50 a month just so you can go get royalty free music. Whereas now, if you have something like AI generated tools that can create music for you and you can decide the sound and the pace of the music and the vibe that you want. Right now, they might not be that great, but in the near future, I can see these tools getting a lot better and being super useful. So that was V.io. Google Bard is another one. It's a competitor of ChatGPT. Obviously, Google's competitor, and there's just ChatGPT competitors popping up all the time now. ChatGPT obviously was the first one that came out and got a lot of headlines, made a lot of noise, and it also has very powerful capabilities. So I'm not taking anything away from ChatGPT, but just saying as we continue to go through the talk, I wanted to give different examples of other tools people might not have heard of as much. So you can go out there and kind of experiment and play around with it. What I like about Google Bard is that it actually connects to your Google tools. So like your Gmail, Google Flights, Google Books, Google Maps, like Google Hotels. And so you can literally use it like a chat GPT, but for all your connected Google tools. So in the example right here, even though it's not playing because I'm on stream, but this is a GIF example where I actually used it to plan a trip for me. So I gave it like a flight itinerary, like what city I want to leave from, where I want to go, the dates I want to go to, um, how much I'm looking to spend, what type of resorts I want to stay at, or places, hotels I want to stay at. I also mentioned like activities that I might want to do, and it can use real data from Google Flights, Google Hotels, all those things. It can surf the web and actually give you a legitimate itinerary with real links to the websites. You can look at the prices, do price comparisons, reviews, like the whole nine. It can do it for you. So, like I said, similar to ChatGPT in the way you interact with it, but tons of different capabilities than ChatGPT. So I think it's important to get out there and kind of just explore all the different tools because there's so many generative AI tools coming out every single day, and it's becoming more and more common, and they're becoming more and more powerful. So that's Google Bard. A couple more here. So we got GitHub Copilot on the left, and I wish my GIFs were playing so you can get an idea of what it does. But GitHub Copilot will literally create code and software essentially with just plain English. So you can write in a comment, like written in plain English, something that you are looking for, like a piece of Python code, a piece of JavaScript code. Node is trained on all different types of programming languages. So essentially, you can pick any programming language you want, and you can have something like GitHub Copilot legitimately write the code for you. And then it also will give you different suggestions. So you don't have to take the first code snippet that it gives you. You can have it, kind of cycle through different iterations. If you're just getting into coding and trying to learn how to code, it's a great tool to use as almost like a pair programmer. So I know for me, when I first started coding, a lot of people struggle with the back end, and I did as well too before I went to coding boot camp and learned Java. So if you're already kind of decent at the front end and you need some back end interactions and requests to happen, um, those are really like possible now with tools like GitHub Copilot. It also does more than just code generation. It can also do like code refactoring, so it can refactor a really verbose or like not very single responsibility or clean piece of code. It can also suggest other things for you. If you can incorporate it into your code base, and you can actually have it do a lot more. Like I said, it's really a pair programmer. So we got a question actually really quick. Let me put this up. So Stance Hall says, "Do you think AI damages your learning early on? What should be prompting AI, or what should what should we be prompting AI for in the early stages?" Yeah, this is a great question because I do think that there's going to be a trade-off, right? Like you still will need to know what the AI is generating, what the code actually does. So there are other tools, and I'll say this for another stream. There are other tools coming out now. I think it's actually called man, I think it's called GitHub. I want to say it's called GitHub GPT or something along those lines, but it's another version of GitHub Copilot where basically it will actually take prompts and try to build the entire application for you, and you can work back and forth with it to fix bugs. It can decipher error messages. So I do think that next level is coming where like you still need to have an understanding of the code, but it'll actually write a full application for you. Whereas something like GitHub Copilot is really just meant to help you speed up your development. So if you have no idea what the code is doing, it's not really going to help you, if that makes sense. Um, so to answer your question, like early on, I think you can use this to help you save time in a lot of cases. So if you already know something you need to do, like for example, if you're trying to write some HTML boilerplate or some CSS animations, and let's just say you're not the best at CSS, but you understand what CSS does, you understand the syntax, you understand how to write it, something like GitHub Copilot can help you be empowered to not spend, tens and 20 dozens of hours of time trying to figure out how to make one animation happen. Whereas you could actually use something like this to get a sense of what the code looks like to make that interaction happen. And then you can tweak it and try to understand it better on your own. But again, this can be used in a lot of different ways. And so there are cases where like people might need to, write backend code, make requests, database queries, SQL queries, and like they're just not good at SQL or joining things. And so like these type of software can really help you be empowered as like a one man team or an early stage software developer where you don't really know yet, and you need to figure out like, okay, I need to get this data from this database, but you're not really good at SQL yet, you're not really good at queries yet. So something like this might be able to help you understand the syntax and like the intricate parts of writing SQL queries that you don't currently understand. It can help you save time, but you'll still need to do the work to understand how it works and make sure that it works. You might have to tweak things. So again, I think it's a great learning tool, paired programming partner, if you will. So things like that, I think you should try to prompt it to help you understand and improve your learning curve, as opposed to thinking it's going to build the entire application for you. So, Stance Hall, I hope that answers your question, but really great question right there. So that's GitHub Copilot, really powerful tool, definitely worth checking out. I do think that it might cost like $10 a month, something like that. So yeah, no problem. Yeah, I'm glad that helps. But yeah, so GitHub Copilot, super, super helpful tool. So moving on to this other one, PDF.ai. This is not the only tool that does this, but I really think that this is a powerful tool, or something like this is very powerful because there's a bunch of them that do this. But basically, PDF.ai will take any PDF document, you upload it, and then you can pretty much query things about your document just like it's ChatGPT. So for me, in this example, which again, this is typically a GIF and it would be plain if I wasn't on the stream, but this is a legal document. So what's cool about it, right, is imagine you have a non-disclosure agreement, or let's say you have a lease agreement, or even take like the terms of service for like, the long terms of service that none of us really read. Just imagine for, shits and giggles, you just wanted to go put that into a PDF document and then upload it into something like PDF.ai, and you wanted to ask questions about like what are the things I need to know? Like what are the most important clauses in this terms of service? Or, are there hidden fees I need to know about? What are the late charge penalties for something? What happens if this? What happens if that? You can literally just upload an entire legal document and just start asking questions directly to PDF.ai. And I just find that it's super, and this is a free tool too, by the way. But that's something that I just find really helpful, like document analysis. Because again, a lot of times we don't have a lawyer on standby or somebody with legal expertise around. And so being able to use these tools as a first pass to get like an understanding of something is really helpful. So again, there's so many different use cases that I wanted to open up my talk with these different examples of generative AI because I wanted people to kind of be able to wrap their minds around like how vast this entire technology is. And again, I didn't know who was in the room, so I wanted to make sure that I tried to cover a lot of different use cases and different tools that did different types of uh like content generation as opposed to just text based or visual based things like that. So that was these slides right here. So next we got into this talk or these points and stats about so there was a McKinsey report that came out in June of this year, and it basically found that these were the four sectors in business that were going to benefit the most from what generative AI had to offer. So not to say that other sectors in business wouldn't benefit, but these were the four they found that would be the most helpful, right? So customer operations, marketing and sales, software engineering, which we just talked about with GitHub Copilot, and then research and development. So again, like this is a super broad kind of net, but it shows you all the different use cases that businesses are really going to have when it comes to generative AI. So yeah, keep these things in mind as we kind of go forward. Because again, your use cases might be very different than my use cases. But I just thought this was really helpful that this is what the market kind of feels are going to see the biggest impacts from the use of generative AI in their, in their jobs and in their companies. So, all right, so generative AI is great, but like, what's the problem? So there was this quote from the CEO of Veritas, which is an identity provider company based in Spain, I believe. And so he said that as artificial intelligence advances, it will become more and more challenging to distinguish between authentic and artificially generated media. Without some sort of label, the public is left to rely on their personal intuition alone. So I don't know if y'all were here, if you just came into the stream, but we just went over an article where this literally just came true. So the Biden administration on October 13th just laid out a new set of legislative kind of regulations for AI generated companies, or I'm sorry, companies that produce AI generated software or output things like that. And they already have given almost a mandate that says that these companies now need to support ways to flag AI generated content. So exactly to the point of this quote right here. Without some sort of label, the public is left to rely on their personal intuition alone. And that's really important when it comes to the fact that a lot of us use the internet to research things, to learn things, right? And going forward, we won't be able to know if this is just AI generated content telling us the instructions on how to do something or how to learn something versus a person. And that's going to be really important. So I actually think this is a good thing that AI content will now start to be flagged. But again, that's going to have implications for everybody who uses AI in their content creation process, right? So that's exactly what the talk was about. So these were just some big headlines that I wanted to touch on before I got into kind of the nuts and bolts of the talk, which were there was an AI Bill of Rights that came out at the White House last year, actually last October. So that's how I kind of had this feeling that it wouldn't be long before uh, some sort of like regulation came out from the White House around AI. And here we are a year later, October 30th, they just released the new regulations around generative AI. So kind of knew that was coming at some point. They weren't going to let it go unregulated forever. And so here we are today. The Writers Guild of America strike was another big one, even though that's now over. But one of the big points about why they were striking was that the writers wanted to protect their intellectual property from being used to train large language models in AI to basically write scripts, to do character development, to write all the shows and movies that we watch, essentially. So, the Writers Guild of America strike, or the Hollywood Writers Strike, was a really big news headline in the AI world, in my opinion, for that very reason, because it was literally an example of the negative impacts that AI is going to have on some people's careers, and even creative spaces aren't safe, right? Like, I think a lot of times we think that that's the unique part of the human experience, is that we can still be creative. We'll still be the ones to write music and do videography and produce shows and create visual art and things like that. But the Writers Guild of America strike actually showed that these big major studios are actually pushing to outsource even that part, the creative part of, creating shows and series and things like that. So luckily this didn't happen. They were able to, work that out so that they can go return back to work. But, we can't expect that one strike is going to stop that initiative from happening. I'm sure that at some point in the future, there will be, AI generated whatever, whether it's content for TV shows, whether it's series that we watch on streaming services, our movies. So yeah, I mean, yeah, man, that's going to be a very interesting time. And then the last one was the big tech commitment. So basically, in July, seven of the largest AI companies and tech companies really went to the White House to say, "Hey, we volunteer and we pledge, these voluntary measures that we're going to take to help do our part to keep the internet safe with the rise of AI generated content." The biggest thing that came out of that, to me personally, was this idea that content was going to start being flagged if it was AI generated. So that's pretty much what that point was there for, to show that, like, yeah, that was already on its way to happening. So with all that being said, now, right, it leads into the main point of the talk, which is, okay, how do we use generative AI effectively to actually create content? And I have three main points about this. And the first one is not using AI generated content as your own. That's just like purely step number one. And there's quite a few reasons why, but we'll just go ahead and get into it. Um, and the first part of this was that we have to understand how search engines work, right? And of course, Google is the biggest search engine. And so we have to think about how content actually shows up on Google. How do things actually get ranked on Google? And in the past, there was this concept of like the first page of Google, second page of Google, third page of Google, and et cetera, right? But as of this year in 2023, there is no longer pagination on Google. So if you go to Google right now, you type in a search and you scroll down, you'll notice that there's not page 1, 2, 3 anymore. There's just this more results button that I don't know how big this is on the stream, but you can see right here that this is a more results button. And essentially, that is something that has to be clicked now to see the next set of results. So if you don't appear, your content doesn't appear in the first batch of results for a particular search term, then you're relying on people now to actually click the more results button to keep going and seeing, like, okay, what other results are there? And we already know how that was when Google had pagination, right? The joke was that if you're on the second page of Google, like, no one kind of knows you're there, right? So it's the same concept, but it's even more sort of difficult now for people to find your content if you don't rank specifically in the first set of, search results that are returned. So the whole point is that when we think about creating a high quality piece of content, we want to figure out a way that we can make our content have the best chance of ranking on search engines, whatever that is. Because YouTube is a search engine as well, right? Even though it's owned by Google, YouTube is a search engine, Google is a search engine, and there's every search engine kind of has its own sort of formula for how things are searched and recommended and filtered and things like that. But at the end of the day, we still want to be sure that we give ourselves the best chance when we write a piece of content or create a piece of content and publish it, that it can be found online by other people. Because again, we're not typically just creating content because we just love creating content, right? Like, you want other people to be able to find and discover your content online. And typically that's going to happen through some sort of search engine. So we have to take into account what do these search engines care about so that we can basically write a really good piece of content that can help us rank on those search engines. So this is a quote directly from the Google Developer Docs, which says, however content is produced, those seeking success in Google search should be looking to produce high quality, I'm sorry, should be looking to produce original, high quality, people first content demonstrating qualities EEAT. Now we're gonna get into EEAT on the next slide, but here I just want to say that the however content is produced part means that Google isn't banning AI generated content. Like it's totally fine in Google's eyes that you use AI generated content as a part of your content, but what they're more focused on, so they say those seeking success in Google search should be looking to produce original, high quality, people first content to demonstrate qualities EEAT, which we'll get into in the next slide, like I said. But again, high quality, original, and people first, I think are the big things, like things that actually will help other people online, not just reiterating things that have been said a ton of times or just agreeing with everybody who's already put a certain perspective out on the internet. Like it has to be geared towards a specific person and meant to help them and be original and be high quality in the way it's presented, right? So let's get into what those acronyms stand for, EEAT. So what Google defines as EEAT is expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And these are the four factors that they want to see baked into a unique piece of content to be sure that, okay, this person actually knows what they're talking about. They actually gave a unique perspective that's based on some sort of experience that they've had, right? They want to see that you are qualified to speak on the topic. So there's a ton of different factors that go into how does something become considered authoritative. But again, just if you think about your experience and what qualifies you to speak on a certain topic, like whatever your firsthand experience is or firsthand knowledge of a certain topic is, you have to think about how you can bake that into the content as well, right? So that Google knows that you're not just a bot, you're not just, a copy paste AI generated, whatever it is, image, music, like I said, text for sure. So all these things are important and expertise. So again, like your personal experience with something really matters. Your personal opinion matters. So even if it's different than what everyone else is saying online about a product, a service, whatever. If you're reviewing something, I don't know, like whatever it is, your experience and your perception about your experience with something is more important than being agreeable and putting out content that's already been created 100 times online, right? So it's okay to have a different opinion than other people. It's okay to, tell your own stories and anecdotes inside of your piece of content because that's what's going to make it original. That's what's going to show and highlight your expertise and your authoritativeness and also your trustworthiness, right? So again, that's a huge thing that matters in a piece of content, at least in Google's eyes, right? So these four things: expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, those are considered almost the most important parts of a high quality piece of content in Google's eyes if it's going to rank in search, which is what we pretty much all want. So this is another quote directly from the Google Docs, which I felt like was really helpful. So it says, for most pages, the quality of the main content can be determined by the amount of effort, originality, talent, or skill that went into the creation of the content. All right. So the the example I like to give when I did this talk was just think about going to ChatGPT or any other generative AI tool, right, and giving it a prompt, and then just copying and pasting that output, and then publishing that as your own. The question you have to ask yourself is: did that take any amount of originality, talent, skill at all to create that piece of content? And the answer is no, right? It's the obvious answer. Like all of us could go to ChatGPT, all of us can go, to any sort of generative AI tool and have it spit out something, and we can go publish it and say, "Hey, I made this piece of art. I wrote this article. I made this music or I made this video when it's really AI generated, right? So there is no originality, there's no skill, there's no talent involved in doing that. So it might seem counterintuitive, right? To like, yes, you need to put time, energy, effort into your piece of content. It's not just, hey, these AI tools exist. So now let me have it create a ton of content for me. Let me have it write all my stuff. Like it's going to write all my tweets. It's going to write all my blog posts. It's going to write all my product reviews. Like that is the worst way we can go about using generative AI. And that's why I wanted to really make this point with this slide, because the amount of originality, talent, and skill to go into a piece of content are actually still very, very important. So, again, just something to keep in mind as we go through this, because now we're going to start actually talking about, okay, well, how do we use generative AI to actually help us properly create a piece of content? So, my take on this is that we need to use generative AI to help us save time as opposed to writing the content and producing the content for us. And I do have a thought process behind this, right? So for me, I think there's three things that every piece of content typically needs, and or a lot of content, I'll say, maybe not every piece of content, but a lot of content needs these three things that we can use generative AI for to help us with that content creation process and help us save time. So specifically, researching, ideating, and outlining things for our piece of content. And I need you to really think about what that means for you and the type of content that you produce specifically, because this is going to be different for everybody depending on what type of content they actually create. But again, the research part is huge because there's so many things that I don't know if you've ever experienced, like writer's block, or basically just a blank creative like outage where you are ready to sit down and create something, but you're just completely like at a loss. You don't even know where to start really. You're not sure who this is for. You're not sure what keywords and SEO to really relate this to. What's the best title for this thing? So there's a lot of brainstorming around the research part that typically like becomes very important. And so this is where generative AI can be huge, because again, this can help us get the ball rolling without us having to spend time spinning our wheels, looking at a blank screen or a blank page or whatever it is, blank canvas. And you can start to, at least make some meaningful progress towards your piece of content by using AI to give you some ideas for research. Now, again, a lot of things that we do too, going back to EEAT. So expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. So sometimes we might want to research things that help us build authority, right? We want to incorporate like quotes and data, statistics, maybe some graphs and visuals. Like there are lots of things that we can research to help support our argument or support whatever it is that we're trying to do. Like I said, you got to think about whatever this means for you specifically, because there's a lot of different use cases. But I'm just saying that a lot of content involves some sort of research process. And if you can use the generative AI to help you with the research process, then again, you can incorporate that however you want into your own piece of content. So that's where the originality comes in, the creativity, the talent. But again, you're backing it with authoritative data, sources, quotes, graphs, statistics, like those kind of things, right? So that can be really helpful. Sometimes you might not even know who is this piece of content going to be best suited for. So you can have the AI help you understand trends in your industry, or like who might be a good audience for something like this. What are some unique angles you can take on the piece of content that you can bake into it yourself to help you, again, stand out, be authentic, be original. So again, AI can help you with all that research. Same thing with ideating. So, like I said before, I mean, the format sometimes, like if you're doing a podcast, right? Every good show has some sort of format or some sort of structure. So maybe you have a great idea for a podcast or episode, but you don't know the best way to actually structure the delivery of that content. So you might use generative AI, and you might say, hey, I have a podcast on this topic, and I'm going to cover, these main points and these sub points or whatever, and give me the best format to produce this, this in. And it might break up, all your talking points into different, sections of your podcast. It might try to, give you different show segments, like who knows. But I'm just saying that's where the creativity comes in on your part to think about, like, okay, how can I use generative AI to help me save times on things that currently take me a long time to do on my own. Because everybody's different. Some people are really good at researching. Some people are really good at outlining. Some people are really good at the research phase. So it really just depends on what you need help with and what you spend the most time doing in your content process, and figuring out like, okay, well, how can I use AI to help me speed that part up specifically? And the same thing with outlining. So, like I said, the podcast example is true. Maybe you have a high level idea of a podcast episode that you want to create, or a YouTube video that you want to create, or a blog that you want to write, but you need that structure. How am I going to actually deliver this content? So again, AI is great for that. It can break up your blog into an intro, into a FAQ, into like a main section, right? And then same thing with like a YouTube video, right? Like a intro, a climax, an outro. And I'm being really generic here, but my point is that it can help you organize, your thought process for your piece of content, in so that it can be delivered in a way that comes across more digestible to your audience. So just think about ways you can actually use AI as an assistant really in your content process versus being the creator of the content, right? Like the AI being the creator of the content. So those are my three main points about how we can use the generative AI to help us actually save time in the content creation process. I don't know why that slide is blank. Um, so getting into this, so how do we actually incorporate these things, right, into our use with AI? Like how do we help it, or how do we have it help us with research and ideating, outlining things? So the answer always boils down to the prompts that we write, right? Because ultimately the prompt is what is going to determine the output that we get. And the thing is, now the AIs are getting so good that they can take a really basic prompt, like a one sentence prompt, and they'll try to you know, give you the world with just that one sentence prompt. It wants to please you, right? So it's going to try to figure out the best way to answer your question, the best way to give you the most value based on the limited amount of input that you give it in the prompt. But if we flip that on its head and we actually give it a way more detailed prompt and a very specific prompt, and we actually even incorporate the EEAT parts that we talked about, right, into our prompts, then we can get such better results that are so much more useful and so much more accurate on the very first go around, so that while we're working with the AI, we don't have to sit here and have this conversation back and forth where like we gave it a one sentence prompt, it gives us something, but it's not really what we wanted. So we have to refine it now and say, okay, do this again, but do this now, and just keep going back and forth. If we can write a good, thorough 3 to 4 sentence, and that's just like a guideline. I'm not saying that every single prompt has to be, that long, but I do recommend that you are as descriptive and as detailed as possible in your prompt, right? The more we do that, the more we can get what we need from the very first set of results that we get from the AI. Also, when we write these prompts, it might be tempting to talk to it like I'm talking to you, or like I'm talking to somebody that would be, sitting right next to me, right? But instead, we need to be giving it instructions. We need to be very clear, very descriptive about what it is we want it to do for us. And so baking that into our prompts can just do a world of difference for the type of results that we get. Um, Also, specifying the output is really big, because it's going to give us what it thinks that we want versus us telling it what we want. So, like I just said before, in the research ideation process, you might, or even the outlining process, you might want to specify the exact output, like, hey, break this up into bullets based on pros and cons, strengths and weaknesses, create a FAQ section, create an intro, create an outro. You know, um, I want my topics broken up into, bulleted headings with subheadings that go into more detail. Like, it's okay to be that descriptive. I mean, it's actually probably best if you are that descriptive, because it's going to help you save so much time when you get the results back. Like, give me a list of something, or summarize this thing into a short list. Whatever, however you want to, give it or specify the output that you want. I think that doing that is really, really helpful. If you want something numbered, if you want graphs, if you want charts, if you want like whatever you want in your output, specify it in your prompt. Because again, it's going to really help you in the long run save time and get better results so that you don't have to spend as much time with the AI trying to get the right results that you actually want. And then incorporate EAT. We'll see some examples here in a second, but we can literally incorporate the EEAT parts directly into our prompts. And then that in itself can be used to help us create a more authoritative, trustworthy, high quality piece of content that's based on real data from the world, right? So let's look at some examples of this kind of in flight. Now, again, these are GIFs, and they would be playing. So you would be seeing on the right, like the actual prompt here on the left, you would be actually seeing the results that I got and how detailed they are if this was actually playing. But since I'm on the stream right now, you can't see it. But these are some examples, and I try to use different sorts of examples, right? So there's like some marketing examples, there's a business example, then there's a blogging example of different types of prompts that are specific. They're giving instructional prompts or instructions. They're specifying the output and they're incorporating EEAT in the actual prompt itself. So these are just some examples of how that actually could look. So this example, this is for, I think, business research. So the prompt is conduct market research to identify emerging market trends and disruptions that may impact blank, which is a niche or a specific industry. And then it says provide a list. So there we go with specifying the output. Provide a list of suggestions on how to differentiate the blank, which is the product or service, from leading competitors in this industry. And again, if I was able to show you right now, the results I got from this, they're very, very detailed results. They give me, again, the list of suggestions that I'm looking for. And like I said, this is again a research example that's meant to help you incorporate this into your content however you want to. It's not meant to, copy it over here and add it over here. Like, no, this is just meant to help you have ideas. Like I said, think of it as your content creation assistant, really. Um, it's meant to help you gather all the information that you need to be able to, incorporate your own thoughts, experiences, perspectives, anecdotes into the piece of content to write a higher quality piece of content. So that's a research example for business. This one is a marketing example of ideation. So this one is brainstorm a list of marketing campaign ideas to promote an e-commerce store in the blank industry or niche. Think about seasonal promotions, holiday sales, exclusive discounts for loyal customers. These suggestions should be tailored for blank, and that's the target audience. So, again, brainstorm a list of marketing campaign ideas, to promote an e commerce store in insert the industry or the niche. Those things alone right there, right, are super helpful because you're telling it to focus on a specific industry and you're saying, give me a list. And then we specify even further by saying, think about seasonal promotions, holiday sales, or exclusive discounts. So you can go on and chain on more things you want the AI to consider in the responses. But the cool thing about this is that it actually, in the results, it broke all my results down into lists based on each of those things. So it gave me one for seasonal promotions and it gave me a bulleted list underneath that of marketing campaign ideas. Same thing for holiday sales, same thing for exclusive discounts. So it gives you not only all these different ideas, but they're sorted based on a niche in the industry. And then by at the very end saying, these suggestions should be tailored for blank. And we enter the target audience. That's now going to go even further and make sure that all the relevant ideas that it gave you in those lists are tailored to this specific audience. So the more data you give it, the more statistics you give it, the more information you give it about the niche, the industry, the audience, the better the suggestions are going to be. Now, again, if I was a marketing expert, which I'm not, but if I was and I was trying to brainstorm these campaign ideas, this whole prompt or exercise right here of using this prompt would literally just be used to, again, speed up the time it would take to really think about, okay, well, how can I differentiate this campaign from others? What sort of artifacts do I need to create? Do I need to create landing pages? What type of copy do I need to create? All sorts of things, right? Like can come from just literally running this one prompt and just getting the ball rolling on ideas for your industry, ideas for your target market, things like that. So that's what I think is really helpful when we start to, actually write more powerful, descriptive prompts that can be more useful for us and save us a lot more time as we create the content and work with the AI. So let's look at one more example. This is a blogging example for how we can outline something with a good, strong prompt, right? So this prompt for a blog is create an outline for a comprehensive blog post about blank, and it's an industry trend. And it says start with a compelling headline and an introduction that establishes authority. Outline the main sections or subtopics to cover, incorporating data, examples, and expert quotes. Conclude with actionable takeaways or recommendations. Now, I love this prompt specifically because you can pretty much take this prompt verbatim if you write blogs or if you do blog content, and you can swap out the interchangeable parts, which is exactly why they're there. You want to be able to easily swap these things in. I will talk about that next in a second. But this prompt alone will literally give you the bare bones structure of a well qualified blog post that has a lot of this is why I said the specifying the output is important. So it's going to literally give you, it's going to outline the main sections. It's going to give you subtopics to cover. It's going to incorporate data, examples, and expert quotes all in this outline of a blog post that you would then take and you would strip out the parts that are relevant for the piece of content you're trying to create. So maybe some of the quotes or stats are relevant to what you are talking about and what you want to use. Maybe they're not, right? So then you can either try to find different stats, different data, different quotes to tie in, or you might even use the ones that are given to you by the AI as an example, right? So it just helps you with that fact finding, researching part of it, right? But it still is helping you incorporate authority into your blog because again, you're having it generate for you factual real world data, quotes, statistics that you can actually lean on as you form your own opinions in the piece of content, as you write, your own anecdotes and things into the blog. You have that blog being supported by real world data. Now again, you can go out and have this do you can run this multiple times. You can have it generate different, topics for you, subtopics. You might not want to talk about the exact topics and subtopics that it gives you, but again, it can help you overcome the writer's block phase of the content creation process and be like, okay, well, I don't want to talk about this, but these two are really good, so I'm gonna I'm gonna write about those. Or you might take those out, reword them, of course, and make them, your own and summarize them in your own way. But again, it's really just meant to help you give some sort of structure to like, how should I present this information? What are the important things for me to talk about? And then again, what data do I need or what statistics or whatever do I need to help me kind of drive my point home, right? In an authoritative way for a high quality piece of content. So as we go through and we start to compile these like really well written specific prompts, the next point that I had about how we can use generative AI to help us save time is stash those prompts away somewhere for reuse, right? Put them into some sort of notepad, Google Doc, wherever you want to put them, Notion, whatever your note taking like app preference is. Start a living document where you actually, organize and stash away all the AI prompts that you use. Because again, if you write them out in such a way that they're descriptive, they incorporate EEAT, they specify the output, you will be able to easily go copy and paste um, one of your previous prompts. Of course, you might update it from time to time. You might add things, take things out. You might change them, of course. But the point is that you don't have to write them from scratch. And if you get good output from a specific prompt, then you can rely on that prompt. You know that this is a good prompt to help you at least get over phase one, phase two, whatever of your content process. And it's there for reuse. So all you do is swap out the industry, swap out the target market, swap out whatever the keywords are that you need in that prompt, and then boom, off you go. Right. So a lot of times we're not just doing a one and done. We create a piece of content and then we're done. We're never going to create content ever again. So that's the point of having these prompts stashed in the AI prompt sheet somewhere, because that way you can quickly and easily refer to them whenever you need to create a new piece of content, and you're good to go, off to the races, right? So this is a big tip that I had, was just that once you start to actually write those better, more descriptive prompts, put them somewhere where you can, go back and reference them in the future when you create content. All right. So the last point of the talk essentially was avoid AI detection software, which is, again, I think perfect to kind of talk about with the whole, like I said, companies now are going to be flagging AI generated content. So I think this is now perfect to talk about AI detection software. So unfortunately, my GIFs aren't playing in the slides again right now. But the example here, if these were playing, these two software, copyleaks.com and contentdetector.ai, these are two free AI detection software services that literally do exactly what they sound like. They detect AI generated content. So what you can do is, once you have whatever your piece of content is created, and I'm talking about the content that you created, not the stuff we got from the research, the ideation, the outlining, like, no, the final production of your piece of content, whatever you created, right? Take that piece of content, especially if it's text based, and run it through some sort of AI detection software to see, does it get flagged as AI generated? Because even after you reword things, after you restructure it to make it your own, to make it original, to make it high quality, this would be a really easy way for you to at least know, how is your content being viewed by algorithms that are meant to detect AI generated content. Now, they're not perfect, right? They're never perfect. No software is perfect. So sometimes they will they will say something that you wrote that you can attest for sure this was 100% written by me, human generated. It'll still say sometimes that that content is AI generated, and vice versa. Sometimes you might take a piece of AI generated content or whatever, run it through there, and it doesn't even flag it. So they aren't a perfect solution, but what they will do is give you an overall sense of, like, what is my piece of how is my piece of content being viewed by search engines, by AI detection software, things like that. So um, copy leaks will give you like a percentage, like a probability. So it'll say this is like 78% AI generated content. And then content detector.ai does something similar. It'll either say like a percentage or a ratio, something like that, and it'll go through, it'll highlight the parts of your text that tell you, like, hey, this is likely AI generated, this is likely human generated or human written. So the goal is, once you use the AI to, get all the data, statistics and outlining and ideation, all the stuff you need to write your piece of content, you create your piece of content. Now you just want to make sure that you give yourself the best chance possible to not be flagged by these new labels that are coming out. However they're going to start detecting AI software, AI content. You want to make sure, using these free software, that at least you give yourself the best chance of not getting flagged. All right. So that's the main thing. And that was pretty much the end of it. So we got Robo Rich here, says, thanks for live streaming this information. No problem, brother. I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you for being here. Um, that's pretty much the gist of it, man. Like, essentially, like I said, this is what I think right now is the best way that we can use AI to help us in our content creation process when it comes to saving time and things like that. It's really tempting to go out here and pay $70, $80 a month. And there's some of them, like, there's a tool called content at scale, and it's like a AI generated content tool that's meant to write like your ads and your blogs and YouTube descriptions. Like, it does everything, kind of like Jasper, if you've heard of Jasper AI. So all these tools are becoming more powerful, and they're meant to make it so that we don't have to go through this process. It's like the whole point of these tools is they want you to just pay them $250, $800 or $80 a month, $250 a month, just so you can write a little prompt, pick a certain style, like, sarcastic, funny, educational, informative, whatever, and then push a button, and then here you go. It just gives you an article, it gives you a blog, it gives you ad copy, it gives you website copy, it gives you whatever, and then you just copy and paste that. But I think those software are literally kind of a waste of money because of these new regulations that are coming out now with AI flagged content. So even though they're powerful and yes, they can save a ton of time or whatever, they lack the originality, the talent, the skill, the expertise, the authority that you personally bring to your piece of content by incorporating the things that you know, the things that you think, the things that you feel. Like those are very, very important, more so now than ever. So I just hope that y'all find this helpful. I'm gonna save the other stuff I had on some other tooling AI stuff for another stream. But if y'all found this helpful, please, go ahead and subscribe, hit the like, and I will be back very soon, maybe even tomorrow with another live stream for y'all. But yeah, I just wanted to share this because, like I said, I did this talk a few weeks ago, and there's a ton of AI news that came out even since then. And this is going to be a journey that we're all on, trying to figure out how does AI impact every area of our life, whether it's creative, our jobs, content creation, whatever it is, right? So we're all in this together. So I hope y'all found this helpful. This is Darian Stevens, man, and I really appreciate y'all being here. So I'll talk to y'all in the next stream. Peace.